Dark greetings, everyone. Welcome to Rough Start, where we here at Rough Magic Games teach you how to play a different tabletop role-playing game every episode. That's right, we run through it so you don't have a rough start. My name is Charlotte. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a professional GM with Rough Magic Games, a collection of many more professional game masters for hire. If you're interested in playing a game with one of our GMs, be sure to check out roughmagicgames.com. If you already know who we are and love what we do, check out our Patreon. The link is in the doobly-doo below. I love exploring the wide world of pen and paper role-playing games, and tonight, my guest is...
Dark greetings, everyone. I'm Velvet Divine. Yes, that is my real name. Uh, super excited to be here. Charlotte is a dear friend of mine. I am not a professional GM. Quite the opposite. I am a professional table princess. I don't run anything, ever. I've been playing TTRPGs for... Oh, hold on. Gay girl math. 7 years. I think I started at the latter end of 2017. I got my start doing actual play podcasts and a couple of audio dramas before doing like TTRPG live streams full time. But then, work and grad school happens. So for now, I'm mostly just doing kind of home games, but it's still something that I'm very much engaged with. This was a very apt game for me to help cover because I've been playing the World of Darkness systems almost exclusively for the past couple of years in home games and different kind of play-by-post servers.
Hell yes. I'm so happy to have you on. I am so excited to be talking about this game that you have very much experience with. And that game is Vampire the Masquerade. Whoa. How crazy is that? Yes, tonight we are taking a bite out of Vampire the Masquerade, V5, so the 5th edition. Vampire the Masquerade is a storytelling game of personal and political horror, where players take on the role of vampires struggling with survival, vying for supremacy amongst themselves, and grappling with their own fading humanity. It was originally published in 1991 by White Wolf Publishing and has gone through many iterations, the most recent being V5, released in 2018 by, it's complicated. 5th edition had garnered some controversy at the time, which we are not going to get into, but fast forward to 2021, where the game is now published by Renegade Game Studios. And keen audience members will recognize that studio as the same studio that publishes Kids on Bikes, which we also talked about on this channel. So, Velvet, you told us a little bit about your experience with World of Darkness. Speak a little more on that.
Definitely, at least with Vampire. Funny enough, I wanted to play Vampire for a very long time as one of those resident, hashtag goth bitches. It took me...
Same, absolutely same. So
it took me a little bit to find a group, actually, because most of the crew that I was running with when I got my initial foray to TTRPGs, they were very much fans of some of the more kind of indie or Powered by the Apocalypse systems. And they were a little leery of engaging with Vampire because, as you mentioned, Vampire is a game of personal horror. So as we'll get into, there's some stuff that, some people are leery of getting into, which is fair enough. But, once I really got my teeth into the game finally, I fucking never let go. Like, full-on pitbull lockjaw, here we are for the long run.
Perfect.
I think it's very fun, kind of like you mentioned in the little intro blurb. It is very much about you being a monster, kind of clinging on to, whatever vestiges of your humanity you're able to. And so that opens the door for a lot of very interesting concepts and a lot of different ways to engage with that. I am a big fan of the spiral, so I think humanity's for nerds. And whenever I play, my goal is to just, be a train wreck in as engaging and narratively satisfying way as possible. We'll get into some of the mechanics that help you do that, but I'm the reason that all of my storytellers have the Diablerie section either memorized or bookmarked, and I've been the cause of 3 different servers needing to come up with beckoning mechanics.
That's fantastic. Yes, personal horror. I also love personal horror, and as a fellow goth bitch, I think Vampire the Masquerade was one of the first TTRPGs I learned about, and I had actually learned about the LARP version of it and not the TTRPG version. So I learned about that, and I was like, I need to do this. And never did. But fast forward, I sometime during the pandemic, a friend of mine was like, "Hey, I've got the Vampire V5 Corp who wants to play some, Vampire one shot," and I was like, "I do." So I finally got to play Vampire the Masquerade after all these years. Um, had a jolly old time with it. I love horror games, which I try not to show so much bias towards like the things that I talk about on Rough Start because I want to get like a good mix of different types of games. But it has kind of leaned towards some more gothic vibes.
As it
Anyway,
should.
I failed. Oh, excellent. Okay, so without further ado, now that we've talked a little bit about our experiences, let's jump into the actual lore of Vampire the Masquerade. Hey, what's the Masquerade? What does that mean when they say Vampire the Masquerade?
So the Masquerade is essentially this big. It's basically a giant kind of smokescreen conspiracy to prevent the whole of mortal society from finding out that vampires exist. And this kind of came about, after what's called the First Inquisition, which is kind of, the kind of in-universe name for the witch hunts and similar events that went on back in the 1600s or around that era. Because vampires had kind of they had it good, and they got a little too comfortable, and they kind of got their shit kicked in by a lot of their childer and some mortal agents, and they were like, okay, we this can't
We gotta
happen
lock it
again.
down.
Yeah, we
No
gotta
one can
lock
know
this
about
down.
vampires.
Let's keep this on the DL. Because vampires, they only have half of the day, the evening rather, to get anything done, and they're very vulnerable when they're hibernating during day sleep. So it's very much this kind of necessary evil to continue on existing.
Yes, yes, you heard it here first. The first tradition, the Masquerade. Don't talk about vampires.
Yeah. It's like Fight Club.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, you mentioned the First Inquisition. Vampire the Masquerade has very extensive lore. There is,
Yeah.
in modern times, there has been a Second Inquisition as well. Um, and kind of a fracture in between two major vampire groups. We have the more traditional side, the Camarilla, and they're very much steeped in tradition. And then the other half, the Anarchs, who are, some. I mean, the name Anarch kind of self-explanatory. Um, but beyond that, the other big part of Vampire the Masquerade lore is what clan you belong to as a vampire. Um, so there are a bunch of clans. The ones that are available in the core rulebook for V5 are Bruja, Gangrel, Malkavian, Nosferatu, Toreador, Tremere, Ventru, the Kaitif, and the Thin-Blooded. So let's go a little bit into what each of those means. Those are just silly words right now. So we've got a helpful little slide up on the slideshow. Um, but the Bruja are, kind of rebellious. Uh, the Gangrel are kind of like feral wildlands people. The Malkavians are so weird, dude.
That's why we love
Uh,
them.
yeah, I love them too. They are like mad prophets, basically. They are oracles who hear voices. Um, the Nosferatu's whole thing is that they're ugly and scary.
Yeah.
Uh, excuse me. Toreador. There we go. Toreador are, seekers of art and beauty, kind of very bohemian. Tremere are wizards and warlocks. Ventru are capitalists. The Kaitif are clanless. And the thin-blooded are, oh god, how do I explain thin-bloods? They
The thin bloods are they're called that way because as so vampires have what's called generations, and each generation that you go up, you are further removed from the source of that vampiric blood. So the blood thins out. And thin bloods are basically vampires whose, kind of connection to the source of vampirism and their blood is so thin and diluted that they really can't lay claim to like full vampirism. They're not considered members of the clans. And their whole thing is, instead of kind of the more classic vampiric disciplines that we'll talk about, they have access to this kind of like MacGyver-esque alchemy that they can do.
Yes, not quite human, not quite vampire. Somewhere in between are the thin-blooded.
Yeah.
And kind of an interesting little aspect of this as well. Each clan has what they call banes and compulsions, which we'll get into a little bit when we talk about the actual mechanics. But these are things that are maybe detrimental about being part of this clan. So, for instance, the Toreador, they love art and beauty. They want to be around art and beauty, and if they're not around art and beauty, that's detrimental to them. Actually, like you will roll worse if you're not surrounded by something you think is beautiful.
Yeah,
All
I
right,
think both of those are really interesting.
yeah. What's another one? Ventru, I think they have a specific appetite for a type of blood, and they get
Yeah,
pissy when they don't drink that type of blood.
right. You have to drink from like a very specific population. And so sometimes it can be like really narrow. It can be like, oh, I can only drink from Capricorns or war vets type thing.
Hyper specific.
As specific as you want. Really, you're just hurting yourself, which is the whole point of vampire. Hurt
Yeah.
yourself and those around you.
Hey, vampire, hurt yourself and those around you. uh, Perfect. Yeah, so like I said, there's going to be a lot of silly words used to describe things. Some more, the embrace is what they call when you've turned into a vampire. Um, Kindred is what the vampires call themselves. If you're one of the kindred, you are, kindred. Um, torpor.
The
Such a silly
torpor
word.
is basically when it's vampire hibernation, and not just like they sleep. It's like you go down
You're dead.
hard.
You're
Yeah,
like literally you're a corpse in the daytime.
right. Yeah, and torpor is basically when you go hard night, either because you haven't had enough blood to kind of keep yourself going, or you just get so injured that the vampire body like shuts down to preserve itself almost.
Yes, exactly. You mentioned diablerie as well, which is when a vampire feeds on another vampire, which is very much a taboo in vampire society.
The big sip is a big no-no.
Yeah, no, we don't. They don't like that. They don't like that. So they do have in the book a list of like kind of helpful like vampire words. So it
There's a
is
little glossary
organized
to help you
somewhere.
through, yeah.
Yeah, there's a glossary which we appreciate. Um, as far as like vampire weaknesses go, it's they like to do their own thing a little bit with vampire lore. So like garlic is not effective against these types of vampires, but sunlight, is detrimental. So there are, little bits of like stuff that is very common in folklore, stuff that they've decided to chuck out the window, stuff like that. They also maybe where vampire stand of the beast, and that is basically, you are an animal. You are not a person anymore. You have given up personhood to become this creature, and this creature wants free reign of you, your body, and the world, and you will have to, hold back the beast a little bit.
Yeah, the beast is so interesting, and everybody has kind of their own way of portraying it and relating to it. But I think it's such an important aspect of it. Um, I always just kind of think it as like this amalgam of like every intrusive thought, and it really like exemplifies that monstrous aspect of the vampiric nature.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's the monster. What's that one Skillet song? It's that one Skillet song.
Oh gosh,
Monster. The song
monster, is
Monster
it
by
monster?
Skillet. It's exactly that. All right. Do we have anything else we want to throw in the lore section right now, Velvet?
I think that the main thing with the lore is I know it can seem really intimidating because there's so fucking much. And some of it, as you do once you have such an extensive lore, some of it is retcon, some of it is very contradictory. I really would say, don't sweat the lore. And just figure out with your storyteller, what it is that you'll need to know or be aware of, for your table.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, the storyteller is going to be like, this is what's important in the story, focus on learning this. And that is super helpful because there is a lot. But it is fun. Like, it's fun to read. I think it's interesting. So,
Yeah, if you're a lore person, like go right ahead, like dive in. But like if that's not you, if you're not gonna want to spend a whole, not even a whole, several evenings like going down the wikis, like don't be intimidated by it. You can definitely work with your table and storyteller to just figuring out what it is that you'll need to know. Or if you're intimidated, like coming in new to the series, there's always the option of playing, kind of a newly embraced or a relatively new kindred, and kind of learn as you play. You don't need to come in to the game or the franchise knowing absolutely everything there is.
absolutely, absolutely great point. All right. Now, let's move on to how to actually play this game. Let's talk mechanics.
Mechanics.
Woohoo! So the first thing I want to touch on is the importance of safety tools in this game. When you're dealing with scary stuff and when you're dealing with sexy stuff, I think it's important to set some boundaries. And this game has the potential to both have scary and sexy things in it, so, as much vampire media does. Um, I personally don't find the vampires in Vampire the Masquerade particularly sexy as far as like sexy vampires go. But to each their own. Safety tools, use them. This is, this book has a content warning in it. There are mature themes, so be wary of that. Don't play this game with children, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely not. I think the most common way I see safety tools run in Vampire, and obviously use whatever you and your table and whoever you're playing with are comfortable. But I typically in all the tables I've been, we use the lines and veil system. So whether it's a session zero or just kind of an ongoing communique, figure out what are hard lines, stuff that you don't want to deal with or see in any capacity, or veils, things you're okay with engaging maybe in the periphery or as background materials, but don't want to super linger or interact a whole ton with. Um, Definitely, it's an important thing because there's a lot in Vampire that um can really go sideways, and might catch you off guard. So I think just knowing what you're comfortable with and not comfortable with, and being able to communicate that to the people you're playing with is important. And also having, I think, some kind of you know red light is the thing that comes to mind. But any, or like an X card or something that,
Yeah.
like if you hit a limit you didn't know you had, or something that, in the moment you weren't expecting to hit you the way it hits you, being able to communicate that and stop play. Because, I think people sometimes see vampire and they're like, oh, like this can be fun, this can be sexy, and it definitely is. But just by nature of the setting and some of the, powers and different things you can engage with, like there's some potential there for some fuckery. So I think just being, aware and sensitive to that is important.
Absolutely. We love lines and veils. We love the X card. When I played this game, the storyteller actually has a phobia of blood.
Oh,
So we
interesting.
talked about that at length in our session 0. We were like, okay, we can go this far with descriptions, but anything past that is a line. So we talked a lot about that, and that's a very healthy conversation to have because you don't want to traumatize your friends. Not for that, truly. All right. Now that I've gotten off my soapbox about safety tools, so the system that Vampire the Masquerade uses, they call the storyteller system. And the main thing that you roll in the storyteller system is a pool of d10s, 10-sided dice, which I have up on the slide right now. You may be wondering why some of those dice are a different color, and we'll get to that. It's for a reason. We will talk about that shortly. Um, but in the storyteller system, and in Vampire the Masquerade specifically, there are 3 types of traits. Um, you have your attributes, skills, and disciplines. So attributes are like your stats in D&D. Skills are like your skills in D&D, and disciplines relate to special vampiric powers that you have as a vampire. You can make human characters in this game, but like, why would you want to do that? So I don't know.
Not to yuck anyone's yum, but
Yeah,
actually to yuck
well,
their yum.
yeah. We've got attributes up on the screen now, so you can see very similar. Charisma, manipulation, composure, strength, dexterity, stamina, intelligence, wits, and resolve. All pretty self-explanatory. I did not put a list of skills in here because it's quite long, and also kind of, if you've played TTRPGs before, you're familiar with the type of skills. It's persuasion and intimidation and etiquette and driving, and so it's your run-of-the-mill stuff. But I do have disciplines on the next slide as well. So these disciplines relate to your special abilities you have as a vampire. There's animalism, which is an affinity and control of animals. Auspex, which is like ESP, awareness, premonitions. Blood sorcery. Celerity, which is like grace and quickness. Dominate, which is mind control. Fortitude, which is your toughness. Obfuscate, to remain unseen. Potence, physical vigor and strength. Presence, the ability to attract, sway, etc. Protean, which is shape-changing abilities. And then, like Velvet mentioned earlier, the Thin Blood's alchemy, which is kind of its own separate thing. So, what do we do with these attributes, skills, and disciplines, and these D10s? How do we combine all that information together?
Definitely, basically you just combine them in ways that make you good at whatever you're looking to do. Ideally, having that follow some kind of continuity from what your character was skilled with as a mortal. And there's different combinations of what you're looking to do. So if you're looking to play a very social character, you might put most of your points into things like charisma and manipulation and etiquette, persuasion, performance. If you're looking to play more of a brainy character, you'll probably go a lot into obviously intelligence, technology, investigation. If maybe you want to play more of a kind of street urchin or streetwise type of rogue, you might go really heavy into like dex and wits. for like stealth and awareness. There's a lot of different combinations, which is kind of a very classic array. But you have, I think, a lot more freedom to put different points into different ability combinations um, that people might be used to if they're coming from D&D.
Hmm.
The other thing too is some of these attribute traits interact with different discipline trees, so that's something to consider. We mentioned the Ventru. Ventru are kind of the very American kind of capitalist vampire. So if you're using Dominate, for example, you're gonna need some dots in charisma and manipulation, because that that contributes to your dice pool for the Dominate abilities. So if
Yeah,
you're
they're all
not gonna want to,
connected.
yeah, so if you're not gonna go heavy social, you maybe don't want to go Dominate, but there's other disciplines you can rely on. Like you can definitely play a very kind of, thuggish or bruiser type of Ventru, because they also have the fortitude discipline, so that makes you very tanky. Um, Not to get like super into the disciplines at this stage, but you have a lot of freedom. So, even if, for example, Toreador, they're very classic socialites. But if you don't want to play a social character and still be a Toreador, you can instead kind of focus on the celerity and just be like a very speedy type of kinetic character.
Yeah.
It's always really fun to kind of play against type, especially, within clan or with your disciplines. And even within those discipline trees, you have different kind of powers you can choose at each stage. So you have a lot of freedom and flexibility in the character you want to play, even within these different clans.
Yeah, highly recommend playing against type. So yeah, you mentioned putting points into these different traits, or dots or pips, and those correlate with how many dice you actually roll in your pool. So a lot of the time when you're rolling, you're gonna roll an attribute plus a skill, or an attribute plus a discipline, or even an attribute plus another attribute sometimes. And however many little points you have in the attribute plus skill is how many dice you roll in your dice pool. Um, so in this example here, we've got up on the screen from the book itself. We've got a character who's canvassing the neighborhood for information. This is a resolve plus investigation test. The storyteller sets a difficulty. In this case, the difficulty is 2. So this player would need to get 2 successes on their pool of dice. So they've got 3 dots in resolve and 3 dots in investigation. So you'd roll 6 dice. A success in this game. This differs than other TTRPGs. A success is always going to be a 6 or up on the D10. So if you roll, 7, 8, 9, that's 3 successes. And that would beat the difficulty of 2. That is really the meat and potatoes of how to play Vampire the
Yeah.
Masquerade right there. um, every success counts towards the difficulty. There are some special traits. You have your health and your willpower. Health is your health, and willpower you can use to re-roll up to 3 dice in your pool. But that is a finite resource, and sometimes you need to roll with willpower, so you don't want to deplete it too much. It's a balancing game of when do you want to use this resource to re-roll in maybe a dire situation versus when do you want to save that for later.
Yeah.
That being said, there are also other modifiers and specialties and equipment that can give you more dice, or let you do whatever to make yourself have a little bit of a better roll. But I want to talk now about there are ranges of success and failure in Vampire the Masquerade. We have from our critical successes to our bestial failures. I want to talk a little bit about what constitutes each of those. So a pair of 10s on your regular dice counts as 2 additional successes, which is worded a little bit weird. So that would be 4 successes total, because a 10 is a success, a 10 is a success, and then 2 10s together is 2 successes. So 4 successes if you get 2 10s on your dice. Dice. Dice is not a word. Well, it is, but
It is.
it's not the one I'm looking for. And then if you beat the difficulty that's set and you have those special 2 10s, that's a critical success. Sometimes your storyteller will grant you a success at a cost. So if you had some successes but failed to meet the difficulty they set, they'll say, oh, "Okay, you do it, but here's a little consequence for you." A total failure means you have no successes. Unfortunate. But hey, you can spend willpower to reroll up to 3 regular dice, so maybe you want to use that there. However, a failure on the hunger die, triggers a bestial failure, and a success on the hunger die is a messy critical. But what is the hunger die? Whoa, we're segueing into my next point. Woo, hunger! What's the deal with hunger? We've got vampires in this game, and they get hungry for blood.
So the hunger meter runs from 1 to 5, and depending on where you are is the amount of hunger dice that you will roll. So let's say you have a total dice pool of 6, and you're at hunger 2. Of those 6 dice that you roll, 2 will be hunger dice, and that just adds to the extra difficulty because, as Charlotte mentioned, let's say you get a crit, but one of those 2 10s is coming from your hunger dice. That will be then a messy critical. So you'll still accomplish what you're looking to accomplish, but it'll be messy or with an added complication. So let's say you're trying to discreetly feed from somebody in an alley, and whereas a regular critical success would mean you can kind of sip and dip real quick, nobody notices. With the messy critical, maybe you drink a little more than you'd like and they pass out, or you maybe are a little messier with your bite than you'd like to, and now they're bleeding. Now you gotta take the masquerade into consideration. How do you hide this person? Do you get them aid, or do you kind of take maybe a hit to your humanity and just leave them bleeding there and get the hell out? So messy critical is similar to succeeding at a cost, but you're succeeding with an added complication.
Yes. Like if you're trying to pick a lock, maybe you rip the door off its hinges,
Yeah, exactly. The other thing with hunger dice is you will typically roll 1. No, that's rousing. I'm getting ahead of myself. But basically, as I said, the hungrier you are, the more hunger dice you get. And so, the more you're doing things while you're at a high hunger, the higher your risk of getting these messy criticals. And more importantly, when you reroll with willpower, you can only reroll your regular dice, so you can't reroll your hunger dice. So if out of that pool of 6, you have 2 or 3 hunger dice and they're all failures, you can't reroll those with willpower. So it's very much in your best interest to kind of keep, that hunger down as much as possible.
Yes.
There's a couple of ways to make sure that you have no hunger, but that usually involves drinking someone dry or committing diablerie. So that it's not something that's readily accessible or advised you do in polite company.
Yes, most of the time in this game, you're going to always be rolling with at least 1 hunger die, and probably more, unless, like you said, you drink every last drop, or you get in some vampire taboos. Yeah, the bestial failure, as a flip to the messy critical, you have to act out your compulsion, which is, there are general vampire compulsions that they talk about in the book, and then also your clan specific compulsion, and you have to you are compelled to do something on a bestial failure. Yeah, that's hunger. I like hunger a lot as a mechanic. I think that it is, like, I don't know, just makes perfect sense for a game about vampires. It's good. We've got up on the screen now a little something about frenzies. So a frenzy goes hand in hand with hunger. If you get too hungry or if you're provoked in some other way, you can lose control. You resist going into a frenzy with your willpower check. So again, why you might not want to spend all your willpower re-rolling your dice, you've got to use it to resist frenzy. So we've got up here like a provocation for a frenzy with the difficulty of 2, so something that's relatively easy to resist. The sight of an open wound or the smell of blood while at hunger 4 or higher. And then everything else on the table gets a little more difficult. And frenzy
Frenzies are great.
generally, yeah. Yes, for messy Velvet Divine, frenzies are great. Yeah, but the you wanted to talk about rouse checks. So the last one we have here on the table is fail a rouse check while at hunger 5. Do you want to talk about rousing the blood and rouse checks and what that actually means?
Absolutely. So rousing the blood and rouse checks is a mechanic where you kind of gamble on a single D10, and if you fail, your hunger increases. So, for example, every evening that the vampire wakes up, you have to rouse. So, at the start of every night, every game session, however you want to run it, you'll rouse, and if you succeed on that dice, no increased hunger. But if you fail, you'll increase your hunger. Um, so that's the waking rouse, initial rouse, however you want to refer to it as. But you can also rouse the blood to increase your attributes. So if you have a role that you really need to succeed at, you can rouse the blood to give yourself a couple of bonus die depending on your blood potency or your generation. And same thing, if you succeed that rouse check, no increased hunger, but if you fail it, your hunger will go up. Sometimes you also have to do a rouse check to activate certain disciplines. So a lot of the starting ones don't require a rouse check, and but a lot of like your level 2, level 3 disciplines will require a rouse check. Um, and then a lot of the higher tier disciplines, sometimes the 4s and 5s will require you to do 2, maybe 3 rouse checks.
Ooh.
So it's very much this really interesting risk economy because I mean, if you're like me, there's no rules. But assuming you're a better adjusted, more conservative player, you don't want to be throwing out powers left and right because you might find yourself, at a very high hunger tier very quickly in the evening.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, rousing the blood. I believe also, if you need to appear more human for some situations, you can rouse the blood to give
Oh
yourself
yes,
rosy cheeks and stuff like that. So like
glad you
there are a
mentioned
lot
that
of
because
reasons to gamble with this.
yes, that one that Charlotte is referring to is called the blush of life, and it's basically you rouse the blood to make yourself
Literally.
appear more human. Um, yeah, you get a little bit more color to you. You have kind of a faint heartbeat in case you're in a situation where somebody might clock that or look for that, which is important, right, in the interest of maintaining the masquerade. And we'll talk about the different levels of humanity, but if you're at a higher humanity, you might not need to use the blush of life. But if you're at a lower humanity where you're very, very monstrous, you kind of need to use that so people aren't running away from you in the street.
Hell yeah. Well, speaking of humanity,
Ah.
whoa, imagine what our next point is. Holy moly. Wow. So we've got the hunger track, but we also have the humanity track. And humanity ranges from 0 to 10, technically, although 0, if you hit 0, you're out of the game. Like you're
Yeah.
totally an animal and you can't play anymore. Um, and so it's they call it a downward spiral in in the book, which is perfect. Um, Most characters are going to start at 7 humanity, and then do or see things that lower that number.
Yeah. And I mean, and beyond just the narrative tracker, humanity also has different kind of mechanic effects.
Hmm.
So if you're a higher tier of humanity, you appear a little less corpse-like, a little more just like a kind of a sickly person. And you're able to, like we talked about, you're able to kind of engage in sexy times with other characters. um you look a little less monstrous. But then as you start going down the tracker around, I think it's humanity 5 and below, you start taking hits to your dice pool for interacting with mortals, because you're just so removed from this human experience that you don't know how to talk to these people. You look a little bit more corpse-like, a little bit more monstrous, and it's a good time. I typically live
You enjoy
around like
it?
I typically live around like humanity 3 to 5.
uh, Amazing. There are also, um, there are kind of levels to humanity loss in this. They call it stains,
Yeah.
which are not like a full lose a full number on your tracker. You kind of mark off that you've stained your humanity a little bit. So you can, those can pile up before you have consequences, basically, is the difference.
Yeah, and yeah, it's interesting because I think I forget the mechanic it works exactly, because I don't engage with it too much, because I don't have a vested interest in maintaining my humanity. But basically, you roll, you do what's called a remorse roll. So you kind of roll
Yeah.
against the stains you have, and depending on whether or not you succeed that roll, you will maintain or lose humanity. And a very interesting part of the system is that it's very easy to lose humanity. It is very difficult to gain it back. um Assuming you do, because some tables might be like, hey, we're not doing, we're not going to do the whole regaining humanity bit, so step carefully. Other times, it's like you got to put a lot of narrative effort into gaining this humanity back. Sometimes you buy it with really steep experience costs, so different tables will run it differently. But that's kind of the thing, is it's really hard to get back once you lose it, but it's super easy to lose it.
Yes. And as a side note, I think the fact that this game has a remorse roll is so funny.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's a narrative game, so obviously, like, things have narrative weight and narrative consequences. And that leads to the fact that they have something called a remorse roll, and that just tickles me. Like, you rolled to feel remorse.
The best part is when you succeed your remorse roll, but you don't actually feel remorseful. So it's like, well, what do I do with this?
Amazing. Fantastic. Yes, we're pressing F to pay our respects when we roll the remorse roll. Um, Fantastic. I think that is where we will take a quick little break. When we return, we will talk about characters in Vampire the Masquerade and go a little bit into making one. Not too far though. We will talk about contests and conflicts as well. And then we will send you all on your way. All right, we will be back shortly. See you on the other side. Hello and welcome back to Rough Start, where Velvet and I are talking about Vampire the Masquerade V5 tonight. Before the break, we talked a little bit about the lore of Vampire the Masquerade itself, and what that means. We talked about rolling your dice pool of d10s. We talked about critical successes and bestial failures and everything in between. We talked about your hunger as a vampire and your humanity as one as well. And now we are going to talk about the types of characters you might play in Vampire the Masquerade. I have up on the screen here the summary for character creation. Obviously, that is very small, and I don't expect you all to read it. I am just letting you know it's in the book. If you need a step-by-step guide, it is right there on pages. Hold on, where I'm going to give you the pages as a tool. We're helpful here. We are helpful. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Finding the page. Page 136 and 137 in the V5 core book. You're welcome. All right, okay, but let's actually go through the steps now as well. This is going to be really quick and dirty. We're not like building a character or anything. We're just kind of talking about what you would do, the quick and easy version. So a lot of the time it's good to start with your core concept, which is, what was their name in life? What did they do in life? How did they become embraced? How did they become a vampire? What would you say the core concept of one of your favorite vampire character was?
Oh my gosh, one of my favorites.
Putting you on the spot.
Oh no, I wasn't ready. I'm kidding. I was born ready.
Perfect.
So, I one of my favorite. Oh my gosh, I love my Bloodbros too much. I think a fun one was a. Oh my gosh, too many thoughts. Some of them are still active. Okay, one was kind of this kind of just street kid, not necessarily a street urchin, but just kind of somebody that went around working as a courier, doing kind of odd jobs. Very resistant to kind of getting a 9 to 5 and making that living.
Nice. I am also very resistant to the 9 to 5. And yet here we are. All right. After your core concept, you're gonna pick your clan. So that if you want to be a Bruja or a Toreador or a Kaitif, now is the time to choose. You could also pick who sired you, who made you into a vampire in the first place. That would go on the relationship map, which we'll talk about in a second. And give the storyteller a handy dandy NPC to work with. In Vampire the Masquerade, they call them SPCs instead of NPCs, but they're NPCs. I don't know what to tell you.
NPCs,
Yeah.
It's trying to be cool, but we know it's NPCs.
They are trying to be cool. And I believe on the next slide, we actually have an example of a blank character sheet as well. If we want to look at kind of what you'd be filling out if you were to play vampire, you can see they've got spots. Oh, well, hold on. We'll wait for the slide to change. There we go.
Ta-da.
Ta-da! A beautiful blank character sheet. You've got spots for your attributes, your skills, and your disciplines, as you can see on here. We don't have to get too into the weeds, but you assign attributes. You've basically got like set numbers of attributes. What words are hard? How do you your best attribute is at 4 dots, and then you have 3 more at 3 dots, 4 at 2, and then you've got 1 that you're bad at. Yeah. There we go. That's just easier to just say what the thing is instead of trying to explain the thing.
We got there.
Yeah, we got there eventually. Then you would pick skills based on your profession, any life events, and leisure activities that you like to do. And then your disciplines are based on what clan you've chosen. So each clan, I think, has 3 disciplines.
Yeah.
Uh,
Quick note about the skills is there are 3 different skill spreads that you can choose from.
oh yes, yes,
So
definitely.
yeah, so you can choose the specialist, which is you have kind of a smaller number of skills at a higher tier. Balanced is what it sounds like. It's balanced. You get kind of a wider spread with more balanced skills, and then Jack of all trades is you have a whole bunch of different skills at kind of the 1 or 2 pip level. So it just depends whatever your comfort is. I think people are typically encouraged to start with balanced. I don't follow rules, so I always go specialist. But depending on how, an important thing to note too is that depending on to how close to the rules your ST wants to play it, they may require you to have different dots and different things. So, for example, if you don't have a dot in athleticism, you won't be able to swim because you're a corpse, so you're not buoyant. So you like if you want to be in the water, you're swimming, you're not floating. Or if you want to, for example, just have basic driving skills, you need at least 1 dot in drive. Uh, I'm a passenger princess, as are all my characters, so I never take drive. If you do, good luck.
Tabletop princess, passenger princess. I also do not have a driver's license, so I feel you on that. Um, yes, thank you for bringing up the different kind of levels of options for picking your skills. This is why I like to have a co-host, because when I forget to say things, you remember.
I got
Woohoo!
to. Circling back to disciplines, yes. So each clan you'll start with, you have 3 different disciplines to choose from, and at a character creation, you will pick one to start with 2 dots in, and another to start on 1 dot with.
Yes.
Something to remember too is in V5 they introduced different what's called the amalgam powers. So they're basically discipline powers that you need like a certain level in another discipline to choose from. I'm trying to think which is one for like the basic ones. I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
I'm also drawing a blank. Oh
Yeah, I don't
no.
remember. I don't remember if there's one in the core one, or maybe I think for the Malkavians, I know dementation, it is an amalgam of something. So I believe dementation is. I think that's dominate, but you need like either obfuscate 1 or 2 to be able to use it. So just keep an eye out for amalgam powers that have kind of those requirements.
Definitely, for sure. Uh, yeah. The disciplines, there are different abilities that fall under those disciplines that you then get to pick. If you've got, 2 dots in celerity, then you could pick a couple of celerity skills to. No, I shouldn't say skills because skills is a word. Abilities.
Abilities,
Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, so that is attribute skills and disciplines. After that, you would pick your predator type, which is your preferred method of gathering blood. So I know that like the farmer predator type gets it from animals, and the siren predator type gets it from seduction.
Ooh.
Um, the alley cat chases you down and just kind of grabs you. Uh, um, and after your predator type, you pick some advantages and flaws, which, you've got a set number of points to put into your advantages, and then you can pick some flaws as well.
Yeah, I believe you have 7 freebie points
Yeah.
worth of advantages or merits, and then you need to pick at least 2 points worth of flaws. And then based on your predator type, you'll also have some additional advantages and flaws. Uh, Predator type, it turns out, can be a really big choice because they have different pools, so you got to make sure that whatever predator type you're picking, you have the dice pool to be able to effectively get food. Like if you're a
Yep.
very kind of social squishy character, you probably don't have the stats to, be an alley cat. And these predator types also come with different advantages and flaws and bonuses they give you. So you kind of mentioned farmer. Farmer means you can only feed off of animals. Uh, you'll get a point of humanity, and then uh, predator types also let you add a point to a discipline tree. So for farmer, I believe you can get an extra dot of protean, and I forget what the other is.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
depending on how you want to spread those out, you can potentially start your character with, 3 points in a single discipline if you have a predator type that lines up with whatever discipline tree you're putting 2 dots into, which can set you up for a pretty kind of like, I don't want to say min max, but a pretty heavy handed start in one direction if that's what you're looking to do.
Yes. It's a dot of animalism or protean
There you
for
go.
farmer. Yeah, so definitely a big choice picking your predator type. And you do play a predator in this game.
Yep.
This is a little reminder. Um, After that, you can pick convictions and touchstones. So your touchstone is actually a mortal NPC, someone who you have a connection to. It could be, if you're a young vampire, maybe it's your grandma who's still alive, or if you're hundreds of years old, maybe it's your next door neighbor. I don't know. It could be anyone. The person who makes you coffee in the morning,
Yeah.
which or in the evening, I guess. You know what I mean. It's literally anyone. Uh,
Yeah, it's somebody that, you have a connection to or some kind of relationship with, even, tangentially, that helps you maintain some connection to your humanity. And typically you pair a touchstone to a conviction you have. And a
yes.
conviction is basically just kind of a driving, code or rule that's very important to your kindred. So it can be something like, always stick up for, downtrodden or the underdog, or in the opposite direction, it's like, do whatever it takes to stay on top, something
Yeah.
along that vein.
Or like if you're young, if you've just been turned and you have like I don't know a daughter, your conviction could be like I will always protect my family.
Yeah.
Like that is it's just a great opportunity for you to give your character a little more depth, a little bit more well-roundedness, and say like there are people in this world who, you don't have to care about them necessarily, but like they matter in some shape or form to you.
Right. Another thing the convictions do for you is they can reduce the number of stains you take if it's something that's aligned with your convictions. So if your
Yes.
conviction is, always protect the helpless, and you kill somebody trying to mug this helpless person, where you might normally take, I forget what it's like 2 stains for murder because you were doing it in defense of this, helpless person, then maybe you only take 1 stain.
Yes. Yeah, you become a vampiric Batman and fight muggers in alleys.
Alley Cat
Uh
Batman, yeah.
yeah, perfect. Or man bat as it were.
Man,
Um yeah, kind of rolling right into relationship maps from touchstones. I did put a little example up in the slides. Um, this is just a helpful little tool. So you've got the PCs and NPCs on here. You just draw relationships in between the characters.
I love that
That's
map.
yeah. It's from the book. It's from the core book.
Oh my gosh.
Their little example of the relationship map. Let's see if I can find what page it's on. Oh no, I typed it wrong. Oh, now we're sinking time into this. Hold on.
While Charlotte's looking that up, I just remembered I wanted to mention earlier. I know we kind of covered the clans that are in the core book, but for those of you who have seen other clans played in any of the like LA or New York by Night, or you're coming from an older edition and are looking to know where your favorite clan is, I'll just let you know where the other ones are. So the Ministry is in the Anarch book. The Banu Hakim are in the Camarilla book. The La Sombra are in the Chicago book. The Hecata, which are the new amalgamation of all the necromancers like Giovanni and Samedi, they're in the Cult of the Blood Gods book. And then the Ravnos, Salubri, and my favorite, the Zamisi, are in the V5 Companion book, which I think you can just get off of the World of Darkness website.
Hell yeah, love that. There are so many clans. I cannot find this relationship map for the life of me. What else do we have to say about relationship maps? Let's
They're a great
see.
way of just keeping track of connections.
Oh yeah.
Depending on how detailed you want to make it, you can also use them to keep track of boons. I don't know if we can talk about boons. Real quick, boons are kind of they're basically a kindred currency. Basically just favors that people owe each other. So instead of, trading stuff like money, right, you can trade boons. So it's like, oh, if you're in a real bad way and you need some blood bags, maybe, that's your preferred way of feeding, um, you can get them from somebody in exchange for, any number of boons.
Yes. Yeah, perfect. That's great. I was still trying to look for it, but I can't find it. It disappeared. I don't know where it went. But yes, relationship map, very helpful tool for tracking all sorts of information regarding NPCs, PCs, etc., etc. And I like when games give you a little thing that's like, here, this is a little treat for you. I've made a chart.
As a treat.
Yeah, as a treat. I think that's lovely. That was the last thing I wanted to talk about for character creation. Is there anything you can think of that we should add for anyone who might want to make a vampire character?
Ooh.
The answer could be no. That's okay.
I'm trying to think. I don't think so off the top of my head.
Excellent. Well, in that case, we will move on to contests and conflicts.
Hey.
Yes. This is the thing that everybody always wants to know about every game. They're like, well, what's combat like? And we're here to tell you what it's like in Vampire the Masquerade. A contest is when the acting character rolls against an opposing character. If the acting character rolls equal to or more than the number of successes rolled by the opposing character, the test is a win. The two people who are rolling against each other do not need to be rolling the same, attribute skill pool. They can be rolling different things. Here up on the screen, the example we have, the storyteller might tell a sneaking character to use dexterity plus stealth, but the security guard would roll wits and awareness to search for them. And then they'd roll that dice pool. Whoever has the higher number of successes wins. And conflicts are just contests that deal damage, basically. Yeah, so conflicts. What I love about Vampire, this is my favorite thing about Vampire, is that a conflict isn't just a fight. It's not just a knockout brawl. It can be a heated debate. It can be, speaking eloquently to someone, and having them listen or not listen. And that does psychic damage to you if they, if they don't listen to your words. That hurts your feelings.
You can just
Um,
bully somebody into taking
yeah,
damage.
exactly. And, that's very true to life, in my experience.
Yeah.
Um, yes. So I'm going to go through really quickly kind of the different steps to a conflict. When each person involved in the conflict has acted once, that constitutes a turn. Players always start by declaring their intent. The storyteller does the same for the NPCs. And then the storyteller declares what attributes, skills, and or disciplines each player should roll. Attackers and defenders roll simultaneously, and whoever has the most successes wins. The difference between the winner's number of successes and the loser's is what the loser is dealt in damage to either their health or their willpower. So health if it's a physical fight, willpower if it's a mental one. So the example we've got up on the screen, if you fire a shotgun at a police officer, hell yeah.
ACAB.
Yep. That's a margin of 2 successes in this case, in this hypothetical, and then you would add the shotgun's weapon rating, which is +4, so the officer would suffer 6 points of damage. Your margin of success, and then the weapon's ability. That's the basics of combat. They have or conflicts. The book also has like advanced conflicts a little bit, farther in the back of the book. But this is really just what you need to get the dice rolling, as it were. How often do you, in your experience in Vampire the Masquerade, how often do you have, social conflicts versus physical conflicts, versus no conflicts at all?
In my experience, I've definitely probably gotten a lot more physical conflicts than I have social ones. Which is a shame. The social ones can be really fun, and there's embedded traditions. Like both the Anarchs and the Camarilla have kind of their official meetings where it's Elysium or like an Anarch rant, where everybody it's kind of like a moot. Everybody comes together to voice whatever is going on, and so I think that's the perfect setting to have more of these social conflicts. I don't run into nearly as many as I would like. So I always encourage people to just start incorporating more social conflict into their games.
Hell yeah. And I think with the lore of Vampire, that's pretty easy to do because vampires are so steeped in tradition. Like saying the wrong thing to the wrong person like is an issue for you if you
Mm-hmm.
if you talk to the baron of some town, because vampires have barons, and you fuck up your etiquette roll and you put your foot in your mouth, like that's bad for you. So that's definitely slots in very nicely to the rest of Vampire the Masquerade. Social conflicts deal psychic damage. Let's go.
Let's go. Let's go.
But say that damage is dealt and we're hurting on our health or our willpower tracker. Um, what's the recourse? How do we heal?
So for health, you can rouse the blood, a full circle, to
Ooh,
heal some superficial damage. Healing aggravated damage, um, you have to rouse. You can only heal like a set amount of aggravated damage every evening, and you have to rouse for it. Um, for healing willpower, I believe you regain like a set amount of superficial willpower based on your resolve or your composure attribute every kind of night.
that sounds
But then
correct.
yeah, but so the superficial stuff always the easiest to heal. Aggravated willpower super difficult to heal because the only way to heal that is by pursuing your ambition or desire, which I don't think we touched upon. But your desire and ambition are basically different goals that your character is pursuing. Your desire is something more kind of immediate or short term. It can be something like, oh, I want to introduce myself to this primogen or this court official, or I want to get this like snazzy new ride. And your ambition is something kind of longer term, maybe unreachable. Who knows that you're working towards? So it could be like, I want a court position. I want to find a man who I want to find the 6-fingered man who killed my father, or something like that.
Yes. Great point. Thank you for bringing up superficial versus aggravated damage. They are slightly different. You can take a little bit more superficial damage. Superficial damage basically gets halved if you're a vampire, and then aggravated damage are things that are very harmful to vampires, like fire. That would definitely be aggravated damage. I do also want to add, going back to social conflicts real quick. Um, you, like you said, you take mental willpower damage in social conflicts. But damage can be added if you really value the audience's opinion. It hurts more. And I think that's great. That's everything I think that I have on conflicts. Oh, sustaining too much damage, your character can become impaired, which you actually lose dice to your
Yes.
relevant dice pools. So, taking damage has consequences. It's not just all fun and games taking psychic damage. But yeah, that's really, conflict is very straightforward in Vampire the Masquerade. It's a very narrative heavy, narrative focused game. And, I found in my experience that narrative games are, they keep it streamlined, they keep it relatively simple if you're getting in a fist fight or a word fight. Okay, Velvet, do you have anything to add? Not only about conflicts, but we're nearing the end of our time together. So if you want to add
Oh no.
anything about Vampire the Masquerade.
Vampire the Masquerade, super fun. I encourage everyone to play it at least once. And if you end up liking it, then definitely try the other World of Darkness systems. It's my absolute favorite system. Uh, to this day, I never get sick of it. And if you're just starting out, I think another good place to find just groups or places to play with. There's a lot of play by post servers out there on Discord. So there's definitely a lot of options to get started playing it if it's something you're interested at all.
Lovely. I so badly want to play Vampire the Masquerade with you because I want to see you become the most unhinged version of your character. I want that
We'll
for
do it. We'll
you.
make it happen.
Perfect. Yes, Vampire the Masquerade, super fun game. That's really the basics of it. There are some things we didn't get to quite cover in this because there is a lot of information in the core book. But lucky for you all, you can find the core rulebook of Ver V5 at Renegade Game Studios. Let us know in the comments below. I want to know which of your clans is your favorite or which clan you'd want to play if you were to play Vampire the Masquerade. For me, it's probably Bruja. Um, Velvet, what's your favorite, and where can people find you?
My absolute favorite clan is probably the Zamisi, and then backup probably the Lasombra. I'm kind of bougie. I play like all the high clans. Never gonna catch me playing a low clan. Uh, but you can all find me pretty much everywhere on the interwebs at OG Brown Sugar. Um, you can also find me on a couple of different podcasts, Stories of a Broken Sun and Flight Risk. We're just starting our kind of second season, second arc, so be on the lookout for that.
Ooh.
And if you are a fan of Super Sentai or just teen angst, my dear friend Dwayne and I co-write and produce a Super Sentai audio drama called Tubular Teens with Titans. You can check that out as well.
Hell yeah. I love Tubular Teens.
Yeah.
Amazing. Um, as always, you can find me various places online as either the Cornbreb or just Cornbreb. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you feel so moved. Once again, we are Rough Magic Games. Join me next time where I will hopefully be talking about Eclipse Phase 2nd Edition. All right, that's it for tonight. Say bye, Velvet!
Bye.